Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Credit Union Cowboy. Today, we have a topic that's on the forefront of everybody's mind, and that is cybersecurity. So today, I have a friend of mine, Tim Neiman, who is President and CEO of Dynamic Edge and does a lot of cybersecurity investigations, does IT work for a lot of different institutions, whether it be in the financial industries or healthcare industries and other industries. So without further ado, welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me, Ron. So cybersecurity today in 2024 is significantly different than what we used to think about years ago. Coming from the Motor City originally, I'm kind of a car guy, so I think an analogy of car safety is appropriate these days in comparison to cybersecurity. So if we think about cars, auto companies, they're doing everything they can with cars to keep you, one, from getting into an accident, but two, if you are in an accident, that you can actually walk out of that accident alive. I think the statistic is like 1 in 3 people will be in a car accident. Despite all of the security mechanisms or safety mechanisms, if I want to drive my car off the road, I can do that despite all those things. So the idea here being that the number one cybersecurity liability are people. That's ultimately the problem. So when we think about cybersecurity, there's different ways that threat actors are coming into play. They're attacking your systems over the internet. They're looking for compromises in cloud-hosted, systems, all those types of things. And we have all the precautions. I know you do for sure at Embright. Your members should be thankful for your diligence. We want to prevent things from happening, and then if something happens, to come out of it alive, through an incident. But ultimately, it's the people. So when we think about the number one vulnerability, it's really helping your users and your members think about cybersecurity in a very specific way, keeping yourself out of the accident to begin with. Then if and when it happens, it's not a matter of if anymore, it's a matter of when. When that incident does happen, your systems are in place to protect you from additional damage. We could have a whole episode on net zero trust, which is the new paradigm around cybersecurity. But ultimately, it's your people who you really want to make sure they're doing the best job they can to stay out of those particular incidents, I guess.
Great point there, Tim. And I'm being another car guy too, not from Detroit, but cars and horses, everybody knows for me. But talking about people, what do you see as one of the best ways to educate our teams? It's always going to be the weakest link. We can program to tomorrow, to the next year, everything else on different softwares to prevent things, but people we can't. So what do you see as being probably in the top 2 or 3 ways of educating team members of what to look for?
Yeah, there's kind of 2 pieces, I think. One is just education. So understanding that Embright's never going to contact you through a text message asking you for your password or a PIN to your account, any of that type of thing. So understanding and being educated about how cyber incidents can take place is one part of it, right? Just an awareness. So training around that. The other is actually practicing it. So what we recommend, as you know, is putting your team through cybersecurity training on a regular basis. Just like anything else, you want to be practicing certain things. So being exposed to something, better to click a link accidentally in training, find out that might have been the wrong thing or what to look for, than to have it happen in real, in a real situation. So one is the education piece, knowing what's happening. The other part is actually practicing it on a routine basis, which also gives you the opportunity to expose your team to new threats that might not have happened before. We all remember back in the day, don't open attachments, right? Attachments could potentially have a virus. We have tools to try to protect for that. But now we're thinking about something more sophisticated. The email that comes from Ron Smith, it looks like it's coming from embrightcu.com. Everything seems normal. You're asking me to transfer some funds. Maybe this is something you do or don't do, but knowing that you need to verify each time through practice is part of what we consider, the best way to keep your users up to speed about what's happening and how to respond.
Great point there. I was actually in another state doing a keynote speaker on some cybersecurity incidents and was approached after my talk with a credit union that exactly happened to. They got an email hey, can you transfer money? We need money wired to such and such. Uh, didn't have dual verifications or MFAs set up or on anything. And they went ahead and transferred several $1,000s. And when the CEO came in, because the email supposedly came from the CEO, and she came in, she's like, I never sent anybody an email. And they're out, like I said, several thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, they're out. So great example on that. You brought up another point too that I want to kind of talk about a little bit, and it's trust. Because a lot of people don't get where we're at in today's environment, but there's a huge conversation going on, and it's been going on for a while, about zero trust. Can you give me some aspects in your point of view of zero trust?
Yeah, I'll try not to bore too much. I'm going to give you just a mini cliff notes of what zero trust means. I think the best way to explain this is if you think about your house where you live, you have a lock on your front door, you have a key to that front door, and once you get inside your house, largely for most people in the world, you don't need a key to get to your bathroom, you don't need a key to get to your bedroom, to your den. All those things are available once you get inside your house. That represents the old methodology of cybersecurity with your firewall router on the perimeter of your network. It's the old castle and moat system. You keep people out, and then they can't get into trouble. They get in, they have access to everything. Net zero trust, or zero trust, changes that paradigm to requiring authentication and identification each step of the way. So in my example of a house, now every single door in your house has a key. Not only does it have a key, it has a unique key, and that unique key is unique to the person in the house. So, Jen may have a key to the bathroom. You have a different key to the bathroom. If Jen loses her key to the bathroom, somebody cannot get into your front door because that has a different key. So that's the idea of net zero trust. We want to add the verification of identity with two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. And then if any of your credentials are to get to be compromised, you're limiting the exposure. They can't get out of the bathroom. Is the sort of general idea of what net zero trust is.
That's a great example. I might actually have to borrow that one of these days. So, going along those lines, too, another topic that's come up quite a bit is one's called air gapping. And a lot of people go, okay, what is air gapping? So, I'm going to punt this one back over to you and kind of give a high level example of what air gapping consists of and why we need to air gap things.
We often think about air gapping around backup systems, and I'll explain why that in a second. But the concept of an air gap is the actual separation between two systems. The example I like to use here in Nashville is the Skimmerhorn, right? So if you've been to the Skimmerhorn, we have a very modern, beautiful orchestra hall. And you may or may not know this, but the auditorium in the Skimmerhorn is air gapped. So when you step into the auditorium, you're actually stepping over a tiny little air bubble between the lobby and the actual auditorium itself. What that allows you to do then is to keep the sound more isolated out. So it's a physical separation. The reason why that's important from a networking or a technology or a cybersecurity standpoint is once a bad actor penetrates your systems, they may be able to move laterally around your network. Just like as you access the internet from your computer, you're connecting over a connection, whether that's Wi-Fi or a hard line, you're connecting through an actual pipe, exactly. A hose, so to speak. Mm-hmm. When a threat actor gets in, by the way, back in the old days, which we remember, backups were about, I didn't save my file, the hard drive crashed. It was always about physical problems. But these days, it's actually more about cybersecurity. The first thing that a threat actor is going to do when they penetrate your system is they're going to look for a way to destroy your backups. If they can destroy your backups, they execute a ransomware event and encrypt your data. There's no way for you to recover unless you pay them the ransom. If you have a backup, you can restore from backup prior to their entering your network. You can restore your data. As it goes to air gapping, most backup systems, if you think about people, at home, you want to back up your photos to a USB drive. When that USB drive is connected to your computer, there is no air gap. You can access that data on your computer if you have access to your computer. If your backup system is accessible from your network, there's no air gap. So to accomplish air gapping and backups in other systems, you want to be able to create a line in the sand. So your backups get pushed and then the connection is severed. So if somebody comes in, they're not able to access your backups. Now there's more to it these days in terms of encrypting the backup. in particular. And then also there's another terminology. Again, this maybe a little bit more detail is permanency of the backup, a hardened backup that can't be changed. So if you have a backup that you think about the old days with DVDs, right? You burn
Absolutely.
once and it's done. It cannot be changed. It's immutable. That's the
Mm-hmm.
terminology. So you want your backups to be happening on a particular system, but also immutable, so that if they are touched, they can't be modified and changed in some potential way. So maybe more information than you were looking for, but the concept of air gapping is to make sure that if, again, part of this zero trust methodology, you want to limit the exposure. If something does happen, because it's probably going to happen in some capacity, you want to minimize the damage so you come through it, so your members, everybody's safe overall.
Oh, those great terminologies, great examples of what we all need to be aware of. And I mean, that's not just us in business, that is us personally too. We need to be aware of all this because I can't tell you how many members we've seen come in that have been affected by this. It's not the credit unions affected by this, but it's members that have been either they've let somebody have their PIN or they've let their PINs be exposed, their sign-on credentials be exposed, and all of a sudden now they're coming to us going, hey, what do I do? So great examples. I appreciate, because like I said, that spans everybody. It's not just businesses. Moving on here a little bit and kind of numbers wise, it's a little scary, but if you've got some numbers that you can share with us on, just different businesses, because you deal with all kinds of businesses in your environment, not just financials. But what do you see just kind of like hacking, attempts at hacking? What do you see on average where a business, they've been able to thwart the attacks, but hundreds of thousands in a month? What on average do you see?
Yeah, I don't have specific updated numbers to tell you. I can tell you a little bit of historical. Like one that always comes to my mind is it's something like 2% now of all internet traffic is being used for compromising. So phishing attempts, network attacks. That much of all internet traffic is dedicated just to trying to break into to an organization's infrastructure. The numbers obviously keep going up. One of the numbers that struck me from before and after the pandemic is the average size of a ransom. So briefly, ransomware, for people who don't know, a threat actor gets onto your system, they encrypt your data so you cannot use it, and then they hold it hostage for money. And if you pay them the money, for the most part, they're gonna decrypt it because they want to stay in business, so they don't want to get the reputation that you pay and then you don't get your information back. So they're pretty good about following through with what they're saying. Another side note, since it's you and you know this too, generally inside of credit unions, there's not just two costs to ransomware. One is, of course, the money if you need your stuff unencrypted, but the other is the value of your members' data. That information is worth a lot of money on the dark web. So anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent. But in terms of numbers, prior to the pandemic, the average was something like 800,000 was the average cost of a ransomware event. Now it's over $1 million. Part of this has to do with cyber insurance and threat actors know that they're out there to pay for it. You're asking about volume and how it affects other organizations. We do hear this sometimes from some of our clients that are not in the financial services or healthcare space. Those two types of organizations are heavily regulated, as you well know. The NCUA, inside of the healthcare space, it's HIPAA. Those requirements, those regulations force you to make some decisions to keep your information safer. But for the most part, other organizations, nonprofits, businesses, they don't have that same regulation. So it's up to them to kind of decide with their IT partner what makes the most sense. And I've heard many times, my company's too small. Why would they target me? My data is not that important. All that may be true, except for the part about being attacked. So I mentioned the volume. This is a numbers game. They have the sophistication to be able to send phishing campaigns and spear phishing campaigns, which we can talk about the difference there too, en masse. They can just send it to everybody, and it only takes one person to click that link to generate some type of an event that could turn into money. And so the volume is huge. And what we actually have seen, this is recent, within the last 3 months, an organization that I'm aware of, that argument was, why would we be attacked? And guess what? they were attacked. Backups were in place, so all that's recoverable. The data, yeah, maybe it wasn't particularly sensitive to be stolen. However, it was out. It was downtime for this company's team, right? We got to come in and restore from backup. We got to get things back set up. We have to do some forensics. Depending on the size of the incident, cyber insurance might come in to help. Forensics has to get involved in terms of what happened. So the actual cost in this case, even than the best case scenario, might be the downtime associated with it and the potential compromise. So we're seeing it across the board. Everybody's getting hit. From a consumer standpoint, your people are getting bombarded with text messages, emails. They look like they're coming from here or there. So the volume is tremendous, and it does not appear to be letting up. Part of what the industry, what technologists are trying to do to sort of combat this is understanding how the attacks can change and developing new solutions or software to help prevent that.
No, you're absolutely right. It is increasing, but when you think of I mean, beyond terabytes of internet traffic that happens, and 2.5% as being a little bit dated data of what that actually equates to, that's a huge number. And then through reports that I review and everything, you're talking about things, it just increases, and every month you see increases in different areas. Every month I get FBI alerts. I get FSISAC reports on different things that are happening out there. So yeah, there's not going to be an end to it. It's going to continue, and state sponsored attacks, things like that. They've got all kinds of money behind them to keep it going. So absolutely. You brought up another thing here, which I want to circle back on, the difference between phishing and spear phishing. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so phishing, PHISH versus FISH. Phishing is the idea that you're getting some type of link that's targeted to you that you're trying to click, but it's generally it's not necessarily specific to you or representative of people in your world. I get an email from Amazon. It appears that it's coming from Amazon. It wants me to click a link. I have an Amazon account. I'm not paying attention. I might click on it. That's the same email that they're sending to millions of people. That's phishing. Spear phishing is more of a social engineering exercise. This is the example you were giving about that other credit union where the CEO was being spoofed. Somebody thought it was the CEO, and so they were behaving in a specific way. That's spear phishing. They're targeting an individual, impersonating somebody else with information that you perceive as unique. So what a lot of times is happening, we all have websites. We have a website. You have a website. I'm on the website. People know that I'm the CEO of Dynamic Edge. It's not me that's being targeted. It's people who know me. So it's people on my team. So Cheryl might get an email that looks like it's coming from me, again, saying, can you transfer funds or what have you? That would be a spear phishing example where it's very targeted. It's harder to kind of see what's happening, particularly if you're moving fast. So part of user education is slow down. Be thinking about what you're doing before you go through with it. I want to add this little asterisk because we've been talking a little bit about training and end users. One of the things that I think is important to understand, this has happened to me too, as a technologist that's exposed to this stuff all the time, I've accidentally clicked the link. Right.
I think we all have accidentally clicked the link at one time or another.
Right. So what I think is important is understanding that it does happen to other people and try to minimize to the best you can the stigma of it. Because what you don't want is somebody on your team to click the link, be embarrassed and worried, and then not say anything. The longer the exposure, the more chances something could get encrypted or stolen. So I would recommend that if you let your teams know, if you think you clicked something, it happens to all of us, you need to let us know right away so that we can follow up and make sure nothing happened, it was mistake, or something does need to be corrected.
No, you're absolutely correct. And, we go over that in meetings with our team. And if you think you got something, because we do phishing testing, things like that. And, I get calls, hey, did you send this email? Or, because I'll get tricky sometimes, send something out just to see who's paying attention. We do the testing, we get reports. And, like you said, no one's perfect. You get going too fast, you're doing 3 things at once, an email comes through, hey, I need to click that. Uh-oh, that was not Ron. So, one of the things we go over, side note here for us specifically, is hover your cursor over that email to see where is it coming from. So it says ron.smith at mbrightcu, but when you hover over it, it's Ron Smith at something, something, something.eu. Obviously not me. I'm not in European Union or anything like that. So, that's one of the things we look at and we try to train and say, hey, say something. Don't worry about it. Say something, because if we catch it, we're good. If it goes, we don't want somebody sniffing around our system for months. Well, that concludes our episode today of Credit Union Cowboy, talking about cybersecurity. I want to again thank Tim for being here. I've known Tim for years. He's my go-to person when I have questions, because I know absolutely nothing, or I know enough to be dangerous about cybersecurity. So when I get into that point, I'm always going to Tim. I encourage you as listeners, viewers, to make sure you have some sort of cybersecurity in place, because as we discussed, you're never too small. We've seen 5-person shops, not necessarily in the financial industry, lose all of their data because they did not have any type of cyber protections in place, because again, it was, hey, I'm too small, I'm not worth anything. These cyber criminals don't designate between size. They're just looking for information on what they can get, what they can sell, and what they can get money for. So please, the best thing you can learn from this is make sure you have something in place, a plan in place for cybersecurity. And again, Tim, thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, for watching Credit Union Cowboy.